This podcast was recorded on January 24th, 2018. By the time you hear it, things may have changed. Welcome to Black Women Talk Politics. I'm Sheila Strain Clark.
I'm Sabria Williams.
And we are back.
We are back. God, life and needing to decompress, I think sometimes. It's like life gets crazy, but if you do not separate yourself from this circus, you will spin out of control.
That's true.
But we did have some really great, like this weekend, we had the Women's March, the 1 year anniversary of the Women's March, and we came back again in several cities. There were 200 demonstrations across the world, the United States, the world, not just the United States. Vegas was the hub this year. Mad I wasn't in Vegas, but happy I was in DC, super happy. And last year I was not able to attend, but this year I was, and I was able to take my daughter, and I was with my niece and a girlfriend of mine and my sister, and being downtown in DC and getting there, the energy was great. And while it was significantly smaller than it was last year, I feel like it was still very impactful. The messaging that we walked away with was, I think, even more promising with the amount of women who have now registered themselves to be in several upcoming elections for 2018. We have more than ever. We had Nancy Pelosi who spoke and was encouraging, and it was on the heels of the government shutdown, which we'll definitely go into later. But the energy was great. I feel like it was. I needed that. Like I said, when you're watching the news daily and you have this, it's such a dark cloud over what I feel like if you have a moral compass, then you're sad a lot. And so going or mad, right? All of it. I mean, but not, you don't feel like that, giddy feeling inside. That little tickle you had in your tummy is gone. That little fire has been now an inferno. And so going sort of gave me hope. It renewed my hope. I was able to see people who wanted a world, I feel like, that I want. Something where women are equal pay. A place where, our immigrant brothers and sisters have a safe haven to come to. A place where our transgendered and gay and lesbian brothers and sisters can feel like they can be in a world of peace and harmony. A place where brown and black people and everybody can just be in a world where it's harmonious. You want the best for your brother and sister. I felt that. I felt it really deeply when my daughter had to go to the bathroom, my 12-year-old, and they were supposed to keep the public bathrooms open during the government shutdown, and they didn't. And I don't believe that was an accident. And had it just been me, I would have been fine. But my 12-year-old's doing the dance, and I'm looking around like, I don't know what to do, baby. And she's like, Mommy, you got to know what to do. So we find a porta potty, and the humanity, they let my daughter go first. But
that's nice.
Yeah, but it was a great. Like I said, it was great energy. It made me feel happy. I was high for a little while, and then you do the hard crash. But I feel like we have a lot of work to do. We have to get out. We have to go to the polls. They definitely acknowledged, several speakers acknowledged African American women and thanked us, which I felt good about, for Alabama and just our loyalty in general to the voting process. No matter who it is, we vote. And that's a part of our democracy, and that's what's important. And so you don't have to vote for who I'm voting for, but vote. I generally, now you need to vote who I'm voting for. In the past you didn't, but now it's important. But so I feel like that's a renewed energy, that the African American woman vote, the fact that more women are now on ballots across the United States than ever before, and they're starting to win. I feel like we need to keep this momentum going. We have the attention span of a gnat, and so what happened this weekend in January at the Women's March and all of that excitement and wanting to do something, I hope it's still here in November for midterms, and that was repeated, and so we just have to keep mobilizing.
Did you feel like, at the last Women's March, the Me Too movement had not broken, in this way that we've
Absolutely.
experienced it over the last 6 months? So do you feel, because I was at the last Women's March, and of course that was right after the inauguration, and most things were Trump focused,
Right.
and but did you see kind of like, for instance, I saw on Facebook this one speaker who did this really awesome kind of longitudinal piece, coming from the perspective of many women going through sexual assault, whether you were a child or
Right.
you were in, a famous person, a celebrity talking about, and then it was Me Too, and then
Right.
it was Me Too. So did you see a lot of reference to that in terms of either the speeches or the signs or?
Definitely in the signs. And so it wasn't necessarily Me Too, but it was always, keep your little hands off my, this. So definitely referencing, and there were a couple of Me Too signs, and definitely the speakers who were, speaking about how when you go to, just equality for women, and not having to be in a room where you feel like you're going to be sexually assaulted, or you have to deal with all of these sexual advances. So yes, the speakers did address it. It wasn't, at least at the DC March, it wasn't a main focus, but it definitely was addressed, and definitely in the signs there were a lot of funny signs that were downing Trump, and talking about our biggest predator, who is in the White House, and how that's not been addressed, and why it should be.
And we know, part of this whole, one of the concerns with the administration, I think, of course it's Trump, but it's really a lot of the people behind Trump and people that he surrounds himself with, like
Absolutely.
Pence. There was a couple articles that came out about how the pro-life movement is really gaining a lot of steam under this current administration.
Oh, yes.
And so, that means, of course, the pro-choice movement isn't, and how, there's quietly, with the appointments of judges like Neil Gorsuch and others, pro-life is getting, more and more steam. Also, I was reading an article today about how quietly there's not a lot of guidance being given around contraceptives, and that's been a large part of the role of Health and Human Services. But some of the pushes to make contraceptives readily available at low cost, that is kind of being either rolled back or at least rolled out very slowly. So when we're talking about the Women's March, and we're talking about women being in political positions, and yes, of course, like, more women are running than ever, and that's great, but we're also talking about the assault on our freedoms that are happening in this current administration.
Well, they tried to, right? So they're also trying to make it so you can't get under Obamacare, you could get your contraceptions for free. Your birth control was free. Now that is not the case. Free or minimal, very, very minimal. That is not the case. Now they're at least trying to knock that off. Which is ridiculous, because everybody agrees that if I don't want to have a baby, then I should. Contraception should not be an issue, but you have these because I can't even call them evangelicals anymore, because they're still supporting Trump. And if we know of his behavior, it's nowhere near an evangelical. But so if you are singularly focused in your politics, and so that's what most of these evangelicals are. They're singularly focused. It's abortion. It's abortion. So he's the first president ever to speak at March for Life, which was on the Friday before the Women's March. And and he's spewing out, and it just sounds, he's lying.
And the thing is that it's very hypocritical,
Right.
too.
Oh, God, yes.
This. We were just talking about this. What's her name? Stormy
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels,
130K.
right? Right, like
2 days before the election.
porn star, and so.
Right, so that's why you have to call evangelical-ish, because you're no longer.
Well, I'm just talking about Trump, because I'm just saying he's playing the game. I get it,
and they're falling into it, and they are too. They want to. they want their way. And so they can no longer say they are Christ-like. They want their way. You are not Christ-like. With Donald Trump in the White House and all of the things that he has done, he doesn't, Christ was for the poor. Christ was for the downtrodden. Christ was for, for all of these, it was not a sexual predator. And all of these things that are Christ-like, he is not. But because of your singular focus, you are getting your way. And because you were so mad that there was a black man in office, in my opinion, that you're intimidated by what that means for your quote unquote future, here we are.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I feel like the Women's March is important in so many different ways.
Right, absolutely.
And so is there a plan that the Women's March would be annual every year, or while he's in office?
I don't know. I don't know. I know, like, they, at least I think last year our DC was the hub. This year Vegas was the hub. So I don't know if there, I mean, I'm sure that because you think about it, so next year, 1, 2, 3, the year after that will be an election year. You think that if for momentum's sake that you'd want to keep that going, and it's hard because the Women's March, the messaging is it's there, but it's also not partisan, right? So they're not specifically speaking, even though it's largely Democrat. They haven't taken a stand. And so that's sort of hard when you haven't taken a stand on, hey, these are our political, as the march whole, as the organization of the march. Everybody speaking there is pro-life and, pro-choice and, Me Too. But it's hard because they want to, it's a women's march, so they want to be able to span out and they want to be able to attract. I mean, but we all know they're not going to attract the other side, so you might as well just take a stand and say, "Hey, we're blue."
Right, absolutely.
So it was good. I hope that we can, like I said, keep the momentum going. I hope we can keep the wave of the woman. And my favorite sign was first we marched, then we ran. And that was a quote from the Times, actually. And then that was on a lot of signs. And so I hope that is the case. I hope that we continue to run. I hope that we support our women who are make sense to support and get them in office. I think things would be very different if we had more women in office.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, that's great. That's great that you went. And I'm sorry that I missed it this time, although, I'm still charged up on the one from last year. So,
right. I had to get my charge in.
Well, that was a great way kind of to kick off the show. You're much more positive than I was going to talk about shithole countries, but
we had to start off with it. Let's try and sandwich it. If we could start positive and end positive, then it's there'll be a lot of shit in the middle, but we can start positive.
Well, I appreciate that.
Was it whole or was it house? Because it's a big difference, apparently.
Well, some people say it just wasn't. There's some debate about did he do or did he not, right? But of course we know.
Which is I feel like that is what angered me most about this whole situation, was that there was even the conversation. Well, because the White House didn't even come out with a statement for the first 2 days about whether he said it. It's like, he speaks how he speaks or whatever. But the fact that we're even having a debate, because we know you said it, and then Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican, and then you had Durbin, who is not, who were in the room, and he immediately comes out and says, this is what happened, and I couldn't believe it. And poor people of Haiti and Africa, or if you're brown at all, this is how he thinks of us. And I'm tired of our news outlets dancing around the fact that they're not going to call him a racist. Donald Trump is a racist.
So, I hope everybody knows kind of a little bit about what we're talking about, which was about 2 Thursdays ago.
Absolutely.
They were talking about immigration. And there was this private,
and it was a bipartisan,
meeting,
small meeting.
And supposedly, allegedly, Donald Trump.
Don't allege. He said it. OJ did it. Come on. It's not he said.
Right. Well, I'm just saying what the story is.
Okay,
and the story is that he demanded to know, why the protections should be for people from Haiti and other nations in Africa, calling them shithole countries rather than protections for people that are from places like Norway. And so, of course...
And Norway don't want to come here. They have free health care.
Like,
they have free
people from Norway been
paternity
endangered.
leave, maternity leave. It's a great life, and not because they're white. It's just because the country is
Scandinavian life is a lovely life.
Right.
Well, I think right. So there's all this whole drama, like what's going on with calling Haiti and Africa shithole countries, and that's very derogatory and very offensive. And of course, then there's this whole no, he didn't say it, and then Durbin, of course, was like, yeah, he did, and then basically, then Durbin is here. He had to defend his character because then they kind of went in on him, right? They were just kind of like, this guy, is making it up. And, you have people coming to his defense like Schumer and others who are saying, no, this guy's been, has a lot of integrity. He's been around for a long time. And like you said, even Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican, said yes. He said it. Now, there were others who, of course, and the Get Along gang.
They were lying.
The Get Along gang was said,
super right-wing conservative.
We never heard that. But, the thing about it is we know that he's not culturally or racially competent or sensitive. So it doesn't.
We know that he is a racist.
And that, too. So we pretty much believe that he said it. And, I think that what you have here is just, again, we don't need more evidence of this. I think we do feel like it's our point to note it for you guys who may yet not be convinced that there is a pervasive pattern here of racism in the White House. So you have, of course, a lot of people who were offended. Of course, fellow members of the fellow Africans and Haitian Americans, friends of mine, folks posting up on Facebook like, I am Haiti, I'm with Haiti. You have Mia Love, who is a Republican from Utah, right, who is Haitian American, and she basically was saying, I'm very offended by this, and I think she was on CNN. Mm-hmm. And they asked her, do you think he's a racist? Do you think Trump's a racist? And she said, yes, I do think he is.
Well, note about Mia Love, who is a Republican and Trump voter. She became only aghast and offended when it struck her immediately and directly about her parents who voted for Trump and how she couldn't believe, no, Mia, this is what you get. You laid in bed with the devil and you are now getting devil stuff happen to you. This is exactly what happened. I don't have any sympathy for you, Mia. Not one bit. Because you've seen his racism. You voted with his racist policies pretty much all the time. You are a horrible person. Just like him. You are mad because, now he's calling you out like you didn't think he was going to. That's crazy. If it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck, Mia. And he was a duck when you voted for him and you knew it. So...
It's interesting. I don't know. I think we were talking about Mia Love a couple of weeks ago, and just, I think that we are Black Women Talk Politics here. So I'll say this,
yes,
every Black woman in politics is not going to have our perspective.
Absolutely not.
And so I appreciate Mia Love. I appreciate a Black woman who will be active, and we have to have some women working alongside of the Republicans because we need some spies.
Absolutely,
first of all, we need to know what's going on, what the conversation is.
No. She's not a spy. She is in bed with the devil, voting with him.
Most people who are spies don't tell you that they're spies.
Well, your vote
they're
does.
Undercover.
Her vote does. Because you cannot vote.
I don't think she's a spy. I'm being funny, but I'm just saying that there is. We've got we got Michael Steele, right, who is a Black Republican who's been
absolutely. Who I listen to Michael Steele. I hear he makes sense, and I may not agree with everything, but I definitely believe that he's not in it for his own. In for his own interest in the same way that I believe at this point Mia Love.
But remember, Mia Love was the one that when we were talking a couple weeks ago, because I dapped her up because she was the one that was saying, why should the government pay for
bad behavior.
For bad behavior,
Absolutely.
right? For the sexual indiscretions of politicians. And she was speaking out where there were a lot of other people that were saying, just push it under the rug or whatever. She said, no, I don't want to use my taxpayer dollars to pay for you having an illicit affair with the staff or whatever it was. So, I don't know. Again, I haven't followed her that closely.
One word about President Trump and his indiscretions.
Right, I don't know. I haven't been following her that closely, but I will say that, she's a person that I mean, and maybe, she's a young person also, too. Maybe this is part of her awakening. She's new to government.
I hope so.
She's new to government.
And maybe she needs to hear things like this to say, Mia, you can't just jump. It's not just wrong if it happens to you. It's wrong because it's happening.
But I think a lot of people, they don't believe that he's racist. And a lot of black people don't believe that he's racist. A lot of black people, I mean, we have this conversation all the time about, in our own community about does racism still exist, and
yes.
But some people think it doesn't. Some people really will say those words out of their mouths. Who knows? Okay. Maybe she was one of those people until now. And now she's like, oh, okay. Right. Wow, he said Haitians. I'm Haitian.
Right. And so now he's racist to her. That's my point. It's like that's what you have to. That's what we have to have.
A lot of times, though, people have to have a personal experience with racism for them to. We need acknowledge that it's like it happens to them. You know what I mean? That's how a lot of people think, especially if you're not impoverished. Right. You're like, oh, that happens to them. Yeah, no. Until that person calls you.
Trainings need to happen because Well,
Mia Love now says she's not with him.
We'll see. We'll see how you.
And I'm sure she probably will still vote with them. I mean, I don't expect to see miracles from Mia Love, but she did speak out when asked.
Mm-hmm. So, what do we have next? So
we're going to talk about the shutdown and reopening that happened around
reopening. It was
like the sandwich. The Women's March was like sandwiched in between the
which
shutdown.
Is why my baby didn't get a bathroom, but whatever. So Friday, the government shut down. It was actually Saturday morning, so it was like midnight. And it was shut down because the Democrats wanted to get a solution for DACA into the budget and into the conversation, and they weren't going to vote on the budget until that happened. And the Republicans then were saying, we want the wall. And apparently Schumer went in on Thursday and was like, look, you can get the wall, Donald. You can have it. We'll pay for whatever it is. And then somebody got into it, and he was like, he agreed with that. But then somebody, Steve Miller, got into his ear and was like, we're not doing DACA. That's not happening. And so then it fell apart. And so that is, in short, why we had the government shut down. And then the Republicans were spinning it as, well, the Democrats shut down the government to protect illegal immigrants instead of the children in the CHIP program, which are children who are getting free health care from the government. There are about 2 million of them in the country. And I mean, it's a great benefit, but that's not what it was. And I God bless the Republicans for their spin. They should all be dizzy because they are always spinning. And the Schumer shutdown was genius and it was quick. And I challenged my Democratic brother and sister to come up with some snazzy, get in that mix, get in that game, because apparently it's working with middle America. If we can get in that game and have it, where we're coming up with some snazzy, shaky Sarah, whatever we need to do, perhaps, then, we'll have some results. But, And most of America blamed the Democrats for the shutdown and not the president, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think the shutdown is interesting because I think I saw quite a few Democrats, blaming the Democrats.
Absolutely.
So I think that here's the thing about...
The problem is we shouldn't be playing...
roulette
with these with kids'
funding. With funding the government, I think.
Yeah, or the kids. I mean, that's what it is. Okay, I'll give you this. I'll give you your wall if you give me. I mean, it's like you're playing poker, and kids. These DACA kids, 800,000 of them, they literally are living day to day. They are in fear. So it's ridiculous that this is what we've come to, that we're playing Russian roulette with these children. On both sides, with CHIP and DACA. I mean, it's a nightmare. And so they were able to... So we were closed on Monday. They came back into the room. Susan Collins, Republican from Maine, was integral in getting a bipartisan meeting together in her office with her talking stick. Her African talking stick that if you turn on, if you Google it, it's everywhere. It's a real thing where she was giving it to... whoever was speaking, and that was the only person that could speak, and that's how they got it done. But there were several Republicans and several Democrats in the room who were sort of in the middle and not on these fringe groups where the fringe are the people who I feel like they're on the playground and they're not getting along. And then you have the people in the middle who are like, oh, I like you, you like me, but we really can't hang. We can sort of act like we can hang, if they're not looking. And so that's what the middle is doing. And they were able to get enough votes to reopen the federal government until February the 8th, where we could very well be doing this again.
Yeah, I think that I just don't think funding the government is to fund or to not fund the government
is an option. Right.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be an ineffective way to get what you want, because again, we've got, like you talked about, we got national parks with bathrooms. We're a tourist city, Washington D.C., for example,
or the United States,
right?
And Grand Canyon, all of these places are
right. Thank you for opening it up. It's not just about D.C.
Right. I know. We think sometimes.
There's the federal workforce, that's furloughed, that didn't know what that meant. When folks are not working,
right.
When you talk about the military doesn't have what it needs, right. There's just no way that even as a minority party to use yes, I think you should use your influence during that process, but to just not vote to fund the government, I just feel like you'll be a losing position. Because the last shutdown that happened during the Obama administration, right. And it was the Republicans, and they eventually caved in too. Because
that was 13 days later.
Yeah, but even still, I don't think they won any points by waiting for 13 days.
Well, they won the presidency.
Yeah, but that didn't happen at that time, right?
I'm just saying. It's all
6 years later.
It's all used. No, it was 3 years later.
I think it was 2013 was the last.
2013 was the shutdown, and then 16.
Right,
it went. It went.
I guess I'm starting with that.
So, but anyway, I just, you're right. I don't believe that we should. Again, we have petulant children who are running the government, because there's no reason why it's only a small group of people that have to be in the room to get along. Certain things should be. Who's saying that they don't want DACA funded? Who is that? Who is that guy saying, no, these kids need to go back to where they came from, even though they were 3 when they got here and they're now 30? What guy is saying that?
I don't,
because that is what's happening.
Yeah.
Literally.
And the date is coming up. So it's an early March date where, basically DACA protections will go away unless Congress does something. So,
and you have some hard line in the House who are like giving the middle finger to DACA. And which, when I say that, I mean the people who represent DACA. That is what they're doing. They could care less about them, and they are not. And so that's why this is sort of like a kick in the face, because Sarah Sanders are like, well, we'll just, they're like, we don't have to come up with an agreement. They'll come up with it, but right now what we have is a hard no.
But what I think we're going to see with this is basically, you're going to have Congress pushing for something to happen, right? Because we're talking about 800,000 people.
800,000 people.
We're talking about the headlines in the press, particularly when we're talking about border states, is going to be nasty. And so they're going to do something.
We've been surprised so much in this last year. I don't have confidence. I hope, again, it'll be like we'll do the pinky swear like we did with the Roy Moore. But I hope, I don't have any faith that this is a given, that these kids, these dreamers will stay here. I don't have any faith that is a given, because this administration, you have the most racist, divisive, white supremacist driven, alt-right, in bed with administration that we've ever had. I don't know. We have to go back to the time of slavery to have something this, bold and ridiculous in our face. It shouldn't even be an argument that these kids can't stay here. That should be like, what?
Yeah, I don't think it's a given, but I do think, something's going to happen here. I think really the question is, what is the policy directive that's going to make sense, right? And that's what we really need to kind of be talking about here. Right. And probably for our next podcast, like, what are people proposing? What are people that are advocates for immigration saying about what should? Because if they're proposing a 1-year extension, is that going to really
we need a long term? Why not make them citizens? This is a group of people who have been here, and for a technicality, they are not citizens. Literally they did. Their parents brought them here. It's not that they got out the crib at 3 months old and walked across the border. That's not what. And through no fault of their own. They've been given amnesty up until this point. Well, give them citizenship. You cannot be a dreamer without having a stellar reputation, without not having a record, without not paying taxes, without not being getting an education or being in our workforce in some way. I mean, and I was listening to the radio talking to a dreamer in Vegas who was saying that, you know what, if my work visa doesn't get renewed, because things are happening right now. People's things are expired. These dreamers, March 1st is the drop dead deadline. But if my paperwork is February 1st, then I may not be able to get my work permit renewed. Then how do I pay my rent? How do I pay my car note? So it's humongous what's happening, and it's we think we have till March, and the Republicans that you believe that you have till March, but no, a lot of the actual dreamers, their stuff is expiring now. They're in peril now. They don't know what to do now, and they may or may not get extensions under this administration, which would then default them, and that would be a way for them to be like, oh, you're in default. You're no longer in the Dreamer program.
Right. So really what we want, again, is for this DREAM Act to be passed, but this is the same act that's been put forward 5 times and it has failed every time. Yeah. So I think that those, Susan Collins and her talking stick,
she needs to go, right, she needs to go hit Donald Trump in the head with it, see if that works.
Just knock him out. All right. Well, that was the shutdown, reopening.
Right.
About 48 hours of madness.
48 hours of madness. And I am glad that the government is back open, not just for the bathrooms, but for all the people who are here. And I mean, I have several family members that work in the federal government. And, it's scary not to think about, hey, I'm not going to get paid for however long. And even if I get it back, I mean, 2 weeks without pay, that's a lot.
Yeah, the government needs to be open. So I'm glad the government's open. And we have to pay attention for February 8th, which is the next threat of closure. So, which is still before the March deadline. So, I mean, I guess,
right. So we're hoping that not
if the Democrats really, feel like they missed a window here, right. There's another one.
I don't know. I don't think that they're that reasonable and non-racist, more importantly.
So this week was also... again, brings forward, when we had Moms Demand gun action. Yeah. When Moms Demand Action, which was a group that's talking about safer gun laws, right? And
just yesterday in Kentucky, we have 2 15-year-olds who are dead at the hands of another 15-year-old at Marshall County High School. So Bailey Nicole Holt and Preston Ryan Cope are no longer with us. And we will send prayers and love and heartfelt emotions to their families because they're no longer with us. And at the hands of a 15-year-old, they say, who is a band student, who opened fire at about 7:30 in the morning. There are 16 students who are wounded as well. She had a handgun, is what is reported now. They believe all the other students who were shot or injured by Stampede will survive their injuries. But in Kentucky, it's I think a town of 5,000, which is small. This is the 11th school shooting this year, though. So, and let that just sit with you. The 11th school shooting this year. First fatalities, but here as we sit, January 24th, it is the 11th school shooting. And we have still had no change in any gun laws. And that is what is the big picture. And no, could that gun law that we are proposing for the buck stops have prevented this? No, but it's a start. And we have to keep talking about it. Because this school is a safe place, and our children should not be killing each other, should not feel like they, want to kill each other. And that's definitely a conversation to have, but they should not have access to firearms to do it either.
Right. And like we were talking about before we started the podcast today, when you drop your kids off for school in the morning, you really take it for as granted. A certainty that they'll return to you that evening, that the school is safe. And, I know I was thinking to myself, I need to be more aggressive, with my kids about making sure that they are paying attention when, their friends are talking, and if and making sure they know what to do if someone mentions having a gun or talks about killing people, and not just brush those type of things off or not even share them with us. And also when we're talking about what are the schools doing to prepare, in terms of shelter in place or whatever, in terms
they
of
have drills at my children's school. They have the shutdown drill, so it's not necessarily just for guns, but I think that's what's preempted it, where they have the shutdown drill. You're supposed to do this, or
right. And so that's what I'm saying, like being more knowledgeable. I mean, I really don't know.
And the only time they
of course they do fire drills, right? But just being more informed about and also making sure your kids know what to do. And so it sounds crazy, but this is, like you said, if we're at the 11th school shooting and we're in January, so I guess if we just take the math, right, if you just multiply that by 12, right, we're gonna have at least 120 over the course of a year. So this is
131.
This is really a huge issue, and the fact that so many of us are becoming used to this is even sadder. So we really have to. I really hope we can get Moms Demand Action back out here with us this year. I think that's got to continue as mothers, as parents of children who go to school every day. We have to get more involved in making sure not just that our schools are prepared, not just that there are better laws around gun reform, but also understanding and making sure there's services for young people who are suffering with some of the things that bring them to this level of crisis in the first place, whether it's mental health services. There's things that we know there's a major issue with bullying. So we have to have a multi-pronged approach. However, we need gun reform.
Right.
This is ridiculous.
And that doesn't mean we're trying to take away your guns, people. You can have, we gun reform does not mean nobody has a gun. That may not be my choice, but I feel like there should be safer gun laws. There's no reason for you to have a machine gun, an automatic weapon. There's no need for you to have 500 guns.
And one of the issues that they were talking about before we move off of this is how when you're in a state and you're in a part of the state that borders other parts of states, how you can be in particularly susceptible. So like where this shooting happened in Kentucky, it's very close to the border of Tennessee, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, right? So the people carrying guns across state lines are getting guns in a state that has much more relaxed gun laws, right? That's also a major issue. Right. They talked about, I was reading an article, I think we talked about this before, like all the guns that they have in New York, and most of them don't come from New York. Most of them come from, so it's not just about the state itself having these really stringent laws, but also having a sense of what the laws are with all of the surrounding states. And, from a policy perspective, how do we tighten that up too? Yeah.
But I feel like if you have reform overall, then that should be in that. That should be tightened up as well. Policy.
Yeah, but it's going to be state to state, right? It's going to be state to state.
But so but if everybody's tightening up, that should be the thing. Everybody has to tighten up.
Yeah. So I don't know what else it's going to take. At this point, I think that
I don't either. But we said it after Sandy Hook. If you can go in and kill first graders and nothing happens, there's not really a rush. They're you know what the NRA is like? They were 15 and not 6 and not 5 and not 4. It wasn't a preschool, wasn't a daycare. That is the bar. And it's low as hell.
It's really sad. So we definitely keep those families in our prayers and that whole community.
Absolutely.
That whole community.
So we have we will always have Mueller because he's not going to go anywhere. And I hope
back to the Russia investigation.
Back to the Russia. And so we found out that last week, Jeff Sessions was questioned with his attorney for several hours. What I appreciate about the Mueller investigation is that he's cool, right? He has swag. Like when you see him you have not heard one word, one peep, not from him or anybody around him. This is a tight-knit group. So tight, in fact, everybody's so scared that they're now saying that there's an Illuminati in the FBI. Republicans are starting this crazy conspiracy. It's sort of like they did in Turkey where the law is not the law. I won't get upset. we are not at that dystopian point yet, but it's interesting how now the Republicans believe that, they're whispering the FBI. They're going after the FBI. Not just the Republicans. Donald Trump, of course, is going after the FBI hardcore because he's getting closer. So there's not, after Jeff Sessions, there's not really anybody closer that they can get, because he's was very meticulous and very calculating and deliberate in how and who he was interviewing. And he literally started at the bottom with this guy named Papadopoulos, and we had no clue, like, who is this guy, And he's working his way up, and now we're at Jeff Sessions. And now, as of today, Donald is like, hey, I will definitely go and be interviewed under oath. No problems, no worries. It'll happen in the next couple of weeks. So that's where we are. And what I'm hoping is that Mueller is able to get him, because if Donald Trump talks for longer than 10 minutes, he's going to perjure himself. That's a fact.
Well, he's going to be lawyered up. Like,
it doesn't matter, but if he goes... It's
going to be him plus his team of, like...
Right, they're literally going to have to take their hand...
to answer that question.
Take their hand and put it over his mouth, because he can't help himself.
They're going to answer all the questions for him.
No, he has to answer, but I mean, they're going to be like kicking him under the table, because if he goes for longer, I mean, he can't not lie. He lies every day. He's like what's the average? 5 times a day?
Well, that's why, it's interesting. Like we talked about, this changes every day, because yesterday they said he would do a mix of, testimony plus written documentation where, obviously you're going to have a lot of spin on that.
Right.
And nuanced language that really says nothing. Right. So now he's going to do the testimony. I think it's just going to keep going back.
I really am excited and interested to see. I don't know that there was collusion. I definitely, there's enough for collusion. I don't think that that's what this is here. I think it's bigger. I think when we find out what it is,
bigger than collusion.
I think it is, because collusion is hard. I think that's going to be hard to get, or even conspiracy. It's hard. Those things are going to be hard. But the money thing, I think the money piece.
Oh, the money laundering.
Oh, the money piece is going to be
big.
Well,
Steve Bannon was subpoenaed as well.
Yes, and he spoke. He spoke already. Yes, he spoke a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and with his lawyer, or he didn't. No, he didn't speak to Mueller. He hasn't spoken to Mueller yet.
Yeah,
he speaks to Mueller next week.
He's been subpoenaed by Mueller and also by the House Intelligence Committee.
So he's already went to the House Intelligence Committee, and that's where he didn't say anything. He was pretty mute. It was very frustrating. But Mueller, he can't pull that shit with. So hopefully he'll be in there for hours and get grilled and be all ugly and sweaty and break down and tell all the secrets, and then it'll be like, oh, we're back to normal.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see, because like you said, when he was talking to the House committee, he refused to answer a lot of things.
Wouldn't.
Which
is so ridiculous. Like, how do you go and then not answer? Why is that possible? What world are we living in? You go to the authorities and you're just like, yo, I'm above you. I'm not saying what you know. I'm not answering your questions. Peace. And I'll sit here for 8 hours and just be,
Well, Steve Bannon is eating crow right now also.
Well, we know that, as he should be.
He's just like, oh, man, I messed up. So, well, I think
we're going to keep watching with popcorn. Because I think it's going to start getting spicy now, buddy.
If we ever find out anything, because like you said, it is kind of mum's the word. So so we got Sessions.
Well, if we find out
Trump,
if we find out, that's when it's the bomb. Boom, things have happened. It is a major shitstorm. If we don't find out, we'll find out later. Then they're going to release everything, or they don't have enough to release anything. They don't feel like they have enough to release anything. I don't think that's the case. I am hoping that we are able to be made privy to all of the juicy details, all of the conversations that were had, because they have enough to start indicting folks for real.
Well, let's keep hope alive. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see, or at least enough to help us with these November elections,
yes,
right?
Minimally,
I think
that's all we need. Yep.
So, all right. So I think that's most of the big news that happened.
That we can, right? This for our Wednesday
midweek hump day,
right? We'll be back on Sunday with our full on podcast. But we did say Stormy Daniels' name. I think we should watch that too. Which, is the fact that was the porn star that Donald Trump has had an affair, alleged affair. We say alleged, but we think it's an affair because he paid her $130,000. which you really don't pay somebody $130,000 just because, hey, what's up?
Well, I think her she had like a 5,000 word piece that she wrote that talked about her relationship with him, but not the sexual part. So.
Well, she can't because she got paid $130,000 not
So
to.
she said they just were good friends. Well, so I think going towards ACT UP. Did they give you any great ACT UP at the Women's March? I mean, what was
support your local folks that are running. Find a cause, find a person you believe in, and help to campaign for them. Do some grassroots, get out there, knock on some doors. So yeah, and vote. That was my ACT UP, and that will be my ACT UP, to find great people to get behind for midterm.
Right, and I think there's a lot of local organizations. I know, at least in DC, like Soul Solidarity, or Facebook groups and things like that, where folks can join to kind of start to pay attention now. I mean, it's January, so we're like,
We have short attention spans. We might want to give them till March, because Lord knows we want everybody to have it fresh in their heads. But I feel, if you're conscious and able and can keep it till November, do. But if you want, I will tell my friends, some of my friends, like, just wait, give me till March. I'll give you till March. Because what I need to do is be ready and revved up. I won't ask too much of you.
Door knocking.
Door knocking, or or remember, whatever it takes, whatever you need me to do, I will not. I'm cool to have it in my head right now. But if you need to wait, wait.
I think that's a great, it's great advice, though, to start paying attention, look and see who's running, see who signs up, and try to talk and get connected. Using this time to get connected to your local scene, so that you're in the know come the spring when it's going to really pick up.
And I think it's important that we look at, there was an article really quickly about the different kind of Democrat, where they're more of a Democrat from where they came from. So they're not necessarily not gun packing. They do have a gun. They have a lot of Democratic values with a lot of the Republican way, the traditional Republican way. And I think that is important for you to actually represent where you come from, and as a Republican or a Democrat. And so I think that might be a help, and something we need to watch, folks who are sort of representing where they come from as a Democrat, and what that looks like. And I think that might help.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
it's been good. Next time.
Yeah. All right. We'll be here. So, for Sheila